Hey guys, Luxger here. So, over the past month and a half, I actually been reading quite a bit lately. Not really been blazing through books, but more so diving deep into the books that inspire my favorite creators. One of them being this guy, Tetsuya Takahashi, also known as Tricky Tet. Because, come on, look at his face. He's one of those guys that would trick you into looking the other way. And his new game called Xenoblade Genesis is coming out next year. But one pretty important thing puzzled me lately. And no, it is not these things. I already made a video covering that. Instead, it's that why the heck the world of Anshar revolves around 6 suns? I mean, does that kind of screw around with the age of the characters? Because technically you are a year older if the world makes one revolution around the sun. But how do you even have a birthday when you have 6 suns flying around you at the same time? It just makes things really confusing. This is why I had to dig in and actually do what I hated doing in high school. Reading books! However, I didn't go too far in order for me to find that answer. And one of them is a book I've been meaning to get to for a while called Childhood's End. Not only a defining masterpiece of science fiction, not only one of Tricky Tet's favorite books, but will find an answer to Xenoblade Genesis' biggest mysteries. But before we move on to the video, don't forget to click like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to keep in touch with my newest videos like this one. I've been cranking out a new Xenoblade Genesis video every month until it releases. So please stay notified for my monthly updates. I also want to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. I recently reached 700 subs, and it would be amazing if we can get more. So if you like the Xeno series and you want to stay up to date, please subscribe to my channel. Anyways, with that said, let's get Corellin! Now, I'm pretty sure 99% of you or more doesn't even know what Childhood's End even is. So, let me go into a little bit of a brief background of the book. During the early 1950s, the well-known sci-fi writer Arthur C. Clarke wanted to create an alien invasion story that rivaled all the rest. At the time, the typical alien invasion story would be like War of the Worlds, where the alien race would rule over Earth, and humanity must find a way to basically stop it. It's a tale that harkens back to war stories such as the Odyssey, or basically any popular war book at the time where the good guys would take out a common enemy. Arthur C. Clarke, with his brilliant mind, wanted to turn the alien invasion concept on its head by adding a psychoanalytical and real-world scientific model to it. And thus, Childhood's End was made. In his 4th novel, Clarke introduces our new rulers of space, known as the Overlords, an alien race that peacefully infiltrates Earth, and does so to learn about the inhabitants on it. Earth is ruled by its supreme leader, known as Corellin, who comes to Earth because he sees people living on it as a threat. That humanity has tainted themselves with losing all connections with each other, and how they all need to ascend to a higher power. Corellin does that by employing secularism and new laws that make everyone's lives better, doing this for years and years upon end, until the Overlords bring down their ships and show the world what they truly look like. Demonic creatures with horns, wings, and long barbed tails. Over the course of the story, humanity basically remained stagnant. This was because the Overlords pretty much provided everything that humanity even needs to survive, and peace was made everlasting. All but one city worshipped the Overlords as gods, where that one city proposed that the Overlords were taking over their basic freedoms, and that their creativity was made as an expense from all the prosperity the Overlords gave to them. In reality, the true purpose of the Overlords was to conduct psychoanalytical research on humanity, where after a century of the Overlords' rule, children will be granted telekinetic powers and clairvoyance, where they will ascend into one consciousness and merge together and become a part of the Overmind, a cosmological intelligence who exceeds any living human who comes near it, inducing their fear mechanism. The children were then cordoned off into their own continent due to humanity's safety. However, the intelligence of the children has grown so massively that the Overmind overwhelmed the rest of humanity living on Earth, becoming extinct in the process. And then the children on the continent burst into a ray of light, which destroys the entire planet the world is built off of. The end. Wow, this seems like a pretty sad and straightforward story for an alien invasion. Instead of humans or aliens winning, nobody wins here. Corellin and the other overlords in the story lament on the fact that they were even a product of them being on Earth to begin with, and they wanted humanity to grow a connection with them, and thus the world became more bleak, fearful, and desolate. And that's what the story of Childhood's End ended up being, with a sad state of affairs where humanity stopped progressing, and lost everything they built for the sake of pleasure. This was why the story had such an effect on Takahashi. He considers Childhood's End his favorite sci-fi novel that he has ever read. In fact, Corellin actually ended up becoming his favorite character, and even made his namesake one of the main villains in Xenogears, although his name was localized into Corellian because, whoops, Richard Honeywood doesn't know sci-fi novels that well. And even the idea of the Overmind, the combined consciousness, and the children with psychic powers ended up being portrayed into the games Tricky Ted has made, with the Overmind being referenced as the main existence and Udo in Xenogears and Xenosaga respectively, the role of the collective unconscious being a key factor in pretty much the entire Xeno series, with its main purpose as a connection point, and people with psychic powers being present in the form of characters performing ether, or children that have mystical powers within them. However, what does all this sci-fi and psychoanalytical stuff have to do with Xenoblade Genesis? It is clearly stated that the game will take on the role of high fantasy and magic. There is no ether in this world, only anima, and there doesn't seem to be a presence of a higher order or a level of consciousness within people. Though the anima cry stones do have some kind of connection to souls, which I highlighted in my previous video, which you should really check out. But overall, everything seems to be governed by a fantasy-like world, with magic, traditional racism, and classism portrayed in the high fantasy genre. But this is where Tricky Ted comes in and says, nope! This is what you expect! And that mainly has to do with the 6 suns, quote-unquote, and the concave world, with there being 5 blue suns and 1 regular sun that rises and sets within the world. And this is where the connection to Childhood's End comes in. So, one big plot point of the story that I did not touch on was the characters finding the location of where the Overlord's main planet was, which fell in the hands of Jan Rodrix, a gifted astrophysicist. He then figures out that the Overlord's main planet is located within the Carina constellation. Jan then focuses on traveling there by going into a giant whale, and the Overlords taking that whale to use as their keepsake, while Jan becomes their stowaway traveling over 40 million light years from Earth, while being in a rotten whale's throat all that time. What a trooper, man! But anyways, my main focus is actually not the gross whale, nor the Overlord's home planet. It is actually the Carina constellation, which is home to many galaxies, stars, and other astronomical anomalies. One of them happens to be said by a certain radio from Future Redeemed.
Taking 480,000 settlers to the Eta Carina Nebula in the Carina Sagittarius arm of the Milky Way.
The Eta Carina Nebula? What can that even mean? Well, that nebula actually contains a wide variety of anomalies, from a dust gas pillar that resembles a giant mountain, to another dust cloud that shows what looks to be a finger flipping you off, to a wide variety of star clusters. One of those star clusters looks a lot like this, with the brightest star being on the side surrounded by other orangey stars. Does that look familiar to you? But let's head back to that very radio and look at what the context for the Eta Carina Nebula is.
At midnight on the 16th, the first Radamanthus spaceport saw the launch of Earth-life colonization project's 8th mothership, the Icarus, taking 480,000 settlers to the Eta Carina Nebula in the Carina Sagittarius arm of the Milky Way. The Icarus is the 8th interstellar colony ship dispatched as part of Project Exodus, bringing the total number of colonists sent out to the stars to 3 million. The coalition government plans to send out ships 9 to 13 in the course of this year. The 9th vessel, departing in July, heralds a new generation of ultra-long-range colony ships, known officially as Philadelphia-class motherships.
There were hundreds of thousands of people that went to that nebula through the Icarus, a mother-class ship carried out by the coalition government as part of what is known as Project Exodus, a project meant to send millions of people out into the stars, which include 4 ships that were part of ultra-long-range colony ships, colloquially called the Philadelphia-class motherships. Now, in case you Xenogears heads recognize what that was, it's the same exact classification that was given to the Eldritch, one of the longest man-made ships measuring up to 42 kilometers. So yeah, these ships are absolutely massive. But what I really find fascinating about this information is that we can find a direct correlation between what could have happened with the Icarus when it left Earth and where it ended up at. That's right, I believe the big stone structure shown in Xenoblade Genesis' trailer is indeed the Icarus. Remember where the Eldritch ended up being in Xenogears? It ended up becoming the same thing. It became a stone structure that was a part of the world itself. But the question is, how exactly did Icarus get here? Like, the bow of the ship was what is sticking out of the crater, and not the rest of the ship. How can you even explain this anomaly? And that is where we turn back to Childhood's End one final time. And I promise the Six Sons will play a part in this as well. In chapter 18 of the book, we go into a bit of slice of life for the Overlord crew. This chapter has a few sections where Corellin and another Overlord, Rasha, observe while they travel back to their homeworld. Now, I am going to assume what the both of them observe outside their ship is at the Eta Carina Nebula, due to several things I am about to point out. During their travels, they observe.
It was a world that could never know the meaning of night and day, of years or seasons. 6 colored suns shared its sky, so that there came only a change of light, never darkness. Through the clash and tug of conflicting gravitational fields, the planet traveled along the loops and curves of its inconceivably complex orbit, never retracing the same path. Every moment was unique. The configuration which the 6 suns now held in the heavens would not repeat itself this side of eternity. And even here there was life. Though the planet might be scorched by the central fires in one age, and frozen in the outer reaches of another, it was yet the home of intelligence. The great many-faceted crystals stood grouped in intricate geometrical patterns, motionless in the arrows of cold, growing slowly along the veins of minerals when the world was warm again. No matter if it took 1,000 years for them to complete a thought, the universe was still young, and time stretched endlessly before them.
What they observed was very distinctly Anshar, huh? The 6 suns, the concave planet, the life the planet actually had, the giant crystals growing from the planet. Tricky Ted, you son of a nub! Yep, Takahashi, yet again, references Childhood's End in his games by making the world that Corellin and Rasha see in this chapter be the world Xenoblade Genesis takes place in. And because of this section in the chapter, we actually now know a bit more information about what the setting actually looks like. First is about the 6 suns. I have a 30% chance now that these 6 suns are supposed to represent a star cluster in the Eta Carina Nebula. They are all multicolored like how they are described in Childhood's End, and we see pretty clearly that not all the suns in Xenoblade Genesis are the same color. Also, the suns may play a role in keeping Anshar in perpetual day, but not night. but we will go over their purpose later. Description of the planet being on a loop with a complex orbit, and conflicting gravitational fields sounds a lot like Anshar as well, with it being more like what resembles an O'Neill cylinder, a concept for the colonization of space in the 21st century. Yeah, Arthur C. Clarke thought of this cylinder concept way before the concept even existed. In fact, Clarke made a concept of a habitable cylinder in his book Rendezvous with Rama, 3 years before the O'Neill cylinder was even made. And yes, despite the world the two overlords saw seemingly being uninhabitable with there being a complex gravity field and a sleepless 6-sun day, there is life still living on the planet. We don't know if they saw plant life or humans walking around the planet, but we do know that the planet suffered through the harshest disasters, and yet life still continues on. And then the final fact about what they saw was the giant crystals coming out from the ground, bearing resemblance to the same crystals found everywhere in Anshar's world. They were described as being in every climate the world has to offer. This is truly fascinating stuff. And when I saw that in the book, I knew I had to make a video on this, because I feel that this description of this world is too on the nose. A world where it loops and concaves on itself endlessly must exist in the Xenoblade world, in the Eta Carina Nebula specifically. And this is where I turn to the journey of the Icarus, where it is 40 million light years away from their home planet, trying to detect life in the Eta Carina Nebula. And they see it! The same world Corella and Rasha Varak have described on what they saw. A cylinder-like world with 6 suns arranged in a star cluster, with giant crystals and life coming out of the ground. Or do they? This is part of my theory of why the Icarus got to Anshar in the first place, where instead of them landing normally into the cylinder, they either crashed through the land making a crater, or without knowing a good landing spot, would crash through the world anyways. The people from the Icarus left the ship, and learned how to live on Anshar, discovering anima within the giant crystals coming from the ground, and went through a simple time of the Genesis story. It's pretty incredible that such a timeless masterpiece of science fiction was able to inspire the world of Anshar 70 years later. Childhood's End is really a book that has inspired Takahashi's ideas still to this day, and the book is truly fascinating in and of itself. I cannot wait to see what more ideas Tricky Ted takes from this book than what we already know, because it makes us even more excited for his games by just simply reading books, and I hope that you all feel the same way as well. But that's not all that inspired Tricky Ted in Xenoblade Genesis. The 6 suns have a lot more meaning than just not keeping Anshar in perpetual darkness. And to that, we have to look at another masterpiece of science fiction, Nightfall by Isaac Asimov himself. But this video has gone long enough, so I will save it for next month's Xenoblade Genesis Monthly Updates. But seriously, thanks so much everyone for watching until the end. I highly recommend checking out Childhood's End because there is a lot to the book that I haven't mentioned. But it really is a good read. Don't forget to check out Nightfall for next month's video as well. Anyways, until next time, see you on the other side!